All right. Good morning, everyone, and thank you all for being here today. I want to start by acknowledging the incredible leaders standing, not just behind, but in the room today. Our city and state officials, healthcare professionals, community advocates, and all the people that have been on the front lines of our fight against the opioid crisis. I want to thank each and every one of you for your tireless efforts. I want to specifically acknowledge Emily Keller, a Special Secretary of Overdose Response for the state of Maryland, Council President Mosby, Council Vice President Middleton, Councilwoman Porter, Delegate Young, Delegate Anderson, I think Councilman Conway is here, Councilman Cohen is here, Councilwoman McCray, our City Solicitor Ebony Thompson. Thank you all for being here. Now, I want to take a moment to recognize the people that have been in the fight for their lives. Our neighbors, family members, and friends that battle opioid use disorder and who survived, those who survived, and the thousands of neighbors we lost to this deadly epidemic. Today's announcement and the work ahead is in your honor. Let's please all take a moment of silence to hold the memory of those we've lost. Today, we are here to do three things. First, International Overdose Awareness Day is this Saturday, August 31st. And every year, for a decade now, the city of Baltimore officially marks the day, usually with an official event sponsored by the health department. We will do that again later today, but given this morning's announcement, I thought it would be appropriate to issue a proclamation designating today as the official day that the city will observe International Overdose Awareness Day. I have the proclamation here, and I will read that now. All right. Overdose Awareness Day, August 31st, 2024. Whereas Baltimore City makes up 9% of Maryland's population, but now represents 44% of Maryland's overdose deaths through the first 7 months of 2024. And whereas the opioid epidemic and overdose death have had a devastating effect on communities, neighbors, families, and residents of Baltimore City. And whereas overdose deaths are preventable and access to substance use disorder services, as well as educating the community on how to help prevent overdose deaths, can reduce the number of deaths and improve the quality of life of residents. And whereas we recognize the purpose of Overdose Awareness Day to remember loved ones to lost to overdose and work to end the stigma of drug-related deaths. And whereas today we affirm that the people affected by overdose are our sons and daughters, our mothers and fathers, our brothers and sisters, and deserving of our love, compassion, and support. Therefore, I, Brandon M. Scott, Mayor of the City of Baltimore, do hereby proclaim Thursday, August 29, 2024 as the City of Baltimore's official observance of International Overdose Awareness Day, held annually on August 31st, and encourage Baltimore residents to join in this observance. A witness whereof I have hereunto set the Great Seal of the City of Baltimore to be affixed this 29th day of August, 2024. Thank you very much. Next, we will make two announcements regarding the funding we've received through settlements as a part of our ongoing opioid litigation. But first, let's be reminded of the history that has brought us here today. Baltimore has been disproportionately impacted by the scourge of addiction for longer than I've been alive. The dark, tangled relationship that our city and far too many of our residents have grappled with stems directly back to intentional disinvestment and systemic racism. And often during that history, Baltimore has done what we have always done: showcase our grit, our love for one another, and our determination to overcome. Often throughout that history, our city has been on the cutting edge of harm reduction, led by leaders like Mayor Kurt Schmoke, innovating new ways to take care of our neighbors and choosing public health before political rise and political caution through things like pioneering needle exchange programs. But over the course of the last 2 decades, the actions of major pharmaceutical companies have absolutely shredded our progress. These companies flooded our communities with addictive opioid pills with reckless and deadly abandon, leading to widespread misuse, addiction, and tragically, thousands upon thousands of overdose deaths as residents turn to illicit drugs on the streets containing fentanyl and xylazine. While we cannot undo the harm that has been done or bring back the lives that we lost, we can and we are taking decisive action to address this epidemic and prevent further loss of life and repair the harm done to our communities. That's why in 2018, our city joined the state and jurisdictions around the country in suing the companies responsible for this devastating wave of addiction and overdose. And after years of fighting against some of the largest pharmaceutical companies in the world, our city was presented with an offer to be a part of a global settlement. It would have given us a financial reward that paled in comparison to the devastation and heartbreak that Baltimore has suffered, and did not adequately hold those companies accountable for what they did. So we decided that we would decline to be a part of the global settlement, which the state of Maryland and nearly every other jurisdiction in the country signed on to. For many of them, taking the global settlement was the right call. It made sense. It provided resources to help address the crisis they felt in their own community, and it was a guaranteed safe bet. For Baltimore, however, we knew it wasn't right for us. We knew that we deserved more and that the global settlement neither provided the resources we needed or the accountability that we deserved. We looked to those pioneers 3 decades ago who pioneered our needle exchange program and said, no matter what the critics say, this is the right thing to do, and by doing it, we will save lives. And we chose to embody that spirit by deciding to do the right thing, not the easy thing or the popular thing. And in that moment, we knew the right thing to do was to continue the fight on our own. Now, thanks to the incredible and tireless work of our law department, led by our city solicitor, Ebony Thompson, and their outside counsel, that decision is paying off. We have already won more money than we would have gotten in the entire global settlement offer. I'm gonna say that again. We have already won more money than we would have gotten in the entire global settlement offer. More than double delivered by the end of this year than what we would have received over 18 years in a global settlement. And we still have fights to win against the largest companies of the batch. And as we continue negotiating and look towards our trial date of September the 16th, we're confident that we'll win those cases too. Thank you again to Ebony and your incredible team. However, the work continues. And now with $242 million already awarded to us, it's time to bring forward the months and years of work we put into thinking about this day. So today, I'm making 2 major announcements regarding how the city of Baltimore will utilize the restitution funds that we are securing through our opioid litigation. First, I'm announcing that we are providing the Baltimore City Health Department with an immediate $20 million investment of these settlement funds to support the incredible daily and difficult work that they are doing in our neighborhoods right now. Foundational to Baltimore's progress on addiction and overdose is an effective public health strategy that brings together data analysis, community engagement, communications, and policy. The health department is already doing this work. That's why this funding will help support things like the Spot Mobile Clinic, syringe services, the Staying Alive Overdose Response Program, and Be More for Healthy Babies to address addiction and overdose among pregnant and postpartum women, protecting young children from overdose. At the same time today, in a few moments, I will sign an executive order that establishes a comprehensive framework for the administration of opioid restitution funds in Baltimore City, ensuring these resources are used to heal our communities and save lives in the wake of this crisis. The executive order will establish the Baltimore City Opioid Restitution Fund, create parameters for the spending of the funds, which include funding for programs and services related to substance abuse use, prevention, treatment, recovery, and harm reduction, building and maintaining the infrastructure needed for those programs, planning and developing strategies and programs, and evaluating the effectiveness of funded programs. Additionally, the executive order established a trust to sustain the impact of these funds in the community for at least 15 years. We will require the city to publish a comprehensive overdose reduction strategy, conduct a community needs assessment, create a robust community engagement plan, and publish a transparency and accountability plan at least once every 2 years, as well as an annual report to the mayor and city council. Some of these things, like the comprehensive overdose reduction strategy, we already do, but we are increasing the frequency to bring it into line with our comprehensive violence prevention plan. It establishes 2 new positions in the mayor's office, an executive director of overdose response and a opioid restitution program manager. And it establishes a restitution advisory board to be filled with community members, practitioners, city leaders, members of my administration to guide the use of the city's restitution funds. The advisory board is a key component of our strategy because it will serve as the guide to so many of the programs ultimately receiving funding. And we're emphasizing the importance of having an advisory board that centers individuals with lived and living experience in funding strategies to combat the very crisis that wreaked havoc on their lives. The work that they will do to review grant applications and make recommendations is real work. That's why we will compensate our residents on the advisory board $15,000 per year in line with other labor-intensive boards. As of this morning, we are now accepting applications to the board. I was going to tell you to look at the website and the QR code, but we can't see it right now. It is behind the councilman and the delegate and the deputy comptroller, but you can find it at baltimorecity.gov. We'll make it prominent for everyone to see, and I'm sure it will make it to the mayor's Instagram later this evening. This executive order makes clear that we will do everything in our power to save lives and help our residents heal. And we're going to keep doing this work the right way, diligently, and with the best interest of our residents in mind. Part of what is outlined here includes direct community engagement with town halls, focus groups, and online surveys, so all residents, not just the few selected for the advisory board, will be able to have their voices heard in this process and be able to tell us and their neighbors where they like to see this money going and what would make a difference in their lives and in the lives of their families. This money is Baltimore's, and the framework we're putting together today brings together best practices from around the country and ensure that our city will be set up for success as we go through this process. I want to thank everyone who's been a part of this effort to bring this framework together, from Sarah Wehrle and Josh Schofting, from the School of Public Health, the Bloomberg School of Public Health, to our city agencies and community partners, to our residents who have shared their stories and experiences. This is just the beginning. Over the next several weeks, we will announce more details about comprehensive community engagement strategy and the dates for those events, so please continue to check back on the website for more information. The work ahead to repair the harm done to our community will be long, and it will be very hard. But one thing I know for sure is that we are Baltimore. We are resilient, and when we confront something or anything, we always win. Baltimore, this is a fight that we have been fighting for a long, long time. A battle for the health of our neighborhoods, for the lives of our loved ones, and the future of our young people to be filled with opportunity. It has been difficult and emotionally devastating, but we are poised to be entering a new era in this fight, with more resources and more opportunity to support the great work that so many Baltimoreans have been doing for years than we've ever had. And for that reason, I'm extremely hopeful and I'm ready to do the work, and I hope you are too. And now I will turn it over to Sarah Whaley. Sarah is quite literally the national expert on how cities and states should handle opioid settlement funds. She just so happens to live in Baltimore and work at Hopkins. And we are deeply grateful that she has agreed to join our team to play a crucial role in this work. Sarah?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I moved to Baltimore as a graduate student, and as a social work intern worked in Baltimore City School. I've also worked in community centers throughout Baltimore and was on the outreach team at the Sparks Women's Center. It is all of these experiences that I take with me in my work across the country, but also my work here in Baltimore. In my role now at Hopkins, I've partnered with others to release national guidance and have worked and studied the states, counties, cities, and municipalities who participated in the global settlements and who have laid the groundwork over the last 3+ years for how to use litigation funds. Baltimore is fortunate to have the opportunity to learn from their successes and their struggles. Utilizing that information and under the leadership of Mayor Scott, the city has created a governance structure and allocation plan for these dollars that, as someone who has seen a lot of these plans, I'm impressed by. 3 pieces that the mayor has already talked about, but I think are particularly important and want to stress, are 1, the financial structure. These dollars are protected and won't get lost in the general fund and be used for things that they weren't intended for. The addition of the trust shows thoughtful consideration for the longevity of these funds to ensure their continued impact, not just under this administration, but in a way that can sustain the city efforts for years to come. Second, this holistic approach to these dollars, ensuring that there are structures in place that highlight the restitution funds are a tool as part of a cohesive citywide overdose response. And 3, that there is a commitment to centering the voices of community members through ongoing and robust engagement and the inclusion of the Restitution Advisory Board to ensure diverse expertise of professionals working on the ground in Baltimore City, and most importantly, the expertise of those who have been personally impacted by this crisis. As outlined in the order, the city has committed to ensuring accountability and transparency so that these dollars are used appropriately, wisely, and invested back into our community and into the evidence-based programs and services that are most needed. I am so grateful to have had the opportunity to share the best practices that I have learned from across the country with my city. Through the important decisions that are made by city leadership and laid out by the mayor in this executive order, Baltimore is positioned to become a leader in the effective use of settlement funds. But most importantly, these dollars support a strategy to ensure that the dollars are used to save lives from overdose and to ensure that Baltimore City and its residents can truly thrive. I am now going to turn it over to President Mosby, Council President Mosby. Thank you.
So we stand here today, and I think it was interesting when Mr. Mayor read the proclamation. I think it took this room maybe 5, maybe 10 seconds to clap. That doesn't normally happen when the mayor reads a proclamation. And I think that it took a while for this room to finally come together and clap, because we understand and know how complicated the environment is for all of us today. We understand and know that we are happy and we are excited that we have a mayor that understands and knows the importance of developing a collective body of individuals, of subject matter experts, to go after and tackle this issue that has had its foot on our necks for several decades. We're happy and we're glad and we're blessed that we have a city solicitor that has the courage, the fortitude, the leadership to put together a team, not just to stand in the background, not just to take a quick deal, but to really do the fight. That's why we stood here for 5 or 10 seconds, Mr. Mayor, and we didn't know if we should clap. Because we know the thousands upon thousands of lives lost were preventable. We know the residual impact that this has plagued on our communities, not as it relates to maybe material crime, but as it relates to stripping our young folks out of their potential because they're going home to abandoned houses with parents who are inadequate to serve them because of their substance abuse problems. When we talk about the systemic issues of the city of Baltimore, the reality is that substance abuse sits on the ground floor of our issues, of our problems. And it was hard for us to adapt to this idea, this reality of celebrating something that we know has been deeply, deeply entrenched into who we are as a city. But enough is enough. I thank the mayor and I commend the administration for taking a very bold and aggressive stance by not allowing the naysayers to predict how they were going to move or what they were going to talk about or when they were going to talk about it, but doing it in the right way so this can have generational impact. So a Brandon Scott in 25 or 50 or 100 years does not have to go through the things that we all as Baltimoreans go through. See, I've had the ability of serving as an elected official in the city of Baltimore for the past 13 years. And I know you guys have heard the story over and over and over again. And this little boy growing up in Northeast Baltimore in this 3-bedroom house with 6 women, sharing a bedroom with my mother till I was 14 years old and my older sister. You've heard it time and time again. Brandon's probably heard it 2,000 times. The story you don't hear from me is the story of the other side of my family. Whether it be my brother, whether it be my cousin, whether it be my uncles or my aunts who have succumbed to this crisis. That's what we walk around with on a daily basis. That's what we send our children to school on a daily basis when we tell them they can be all that they want to be. When we tell them that we're going to be there and we're going to be supportive, and they're carrying these burdens on a regular basis. Today, this is a collective effort from this administration, from this mayor at this right time to say enough is enough. And the reality of Baltimore's trajectory around substance abuse does not change in 25 or 50 or 100 years as we continue to kind of push down this path, then it's shame on each and every one of us. Not just as it relates to the community members, not just as it relates to the advocates or substance abuse program providers, not just as it relates to the council and the mayor and the administration and the agency heads, not just as it relates to even the media, but every single one of us. This is something that is preventable. This is something that should not disproportionately impact the place that we love. And this is something that we are all coming together to say enough is enough. Again, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Madam Solicitor. Thank you to all the folks inside of the administration that have put together an ironclad plan to ensure that prevention of overdose abuse in the city of Baltimore stops here and stops today. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Mr. President. Now, we will hear directly from someone who's been leading and doing the work each and every day. We will hear from Mr. Bobby Harris, the medical director of the Spot Mobile. Mr. Bobby?
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. My name is Bobby Harris. I'm the medical director of Healthcare on the Spot, an integrated mobile health program from the Baltimore City Health Department and the Johns Hopkins School of Medicine. Our clinical chief, Dr. Amanda Rosecrans, and I want to thank Mayor Scott and his team for allowing us the opportunity to elevate the voices of the many patients we serve here in Baltimore City who are living with opioid use disorder and experiencing homelessness. We also want to thank the leadership of the Baltimore City Health Department and the Johns Hopkins School of Medicine, including Jennifer Martin and Dr. Amita Gupta, for so supporting this unique public-private partnership that has allowed us to do the work over the last 6 years. And we wanted to thank the incredible organizations that we stand in solidarity with, who have been doing this work in the community for decades, serving this incredibly important population. Organizations like Charm City Care Connection, the Baltimore Harm Reduction Coalition, Community Risk Reduction Services, SPARK, the University of Maryland Medical System's ADAP and HART programs, Healthcare for the Homeless, the Baltimore Fire Department's Population Health Program, People Encouraging People, and the many other individuals and organizations that are dedicated to doing this work in Baltimore City. And I also want to especially highlight the Baltimore leadership, the BHLI, and the incredible work that they're doing with the carceral system. These people need to be identified and recognized. I just want to give them a round of applause. Medications for opioid use disorder unequivocally save lives. However, only 14% of people in Maryland receive buprenorphine in the year after an overdose. Only 14%. And access to medication is absolutely inequitable. Since 2018, our SPOT team has provided low-barrier integrated treatment for opioid use disorder in communities most affected by the overdose endemic. Our work is grounded in humanism, social justice, and harm reduction, and aim to reduce health disparities and improve wellness by providing a continuum of low-barrier, stigma-free, and person-centered health care. We also provide other clinical services to support the health needs of patients we serve. We offer infectious disease testing and treatment, wound care, vaccinations, distribution of naloxone and safe kits, and condoms. And our case manager, who is incredible, and from Western, I was told to say, she helps folks with insurance enrollment. Yeah, I'm from San Diego. I'm still learning the landscape here. She does an incredible job at helping people enroll in insurance linked to primary and mental health care and housing services. In 2023, the SPOT served 850 clients, almost a third of whom were unstably housed or rough sleeping. We started 475 new patients on MOUD, 60% of whom were still in care with us at 3 months. But being well is not just predicated on medication alone. It takes social support, partnership, trust, and an urgency to get outside of our clinical comfort zones and meet people where they are. Our recent care history with a patient embodies this ethos, one that we have learned from our harm reduction and peer recovery partners who have been doing this work in the street and in the community for decades. We met this person outside of Charm City Care Connection at their incredible drop-in center last year. Instead of an exam room, I sat with him outside, and over a cup of coffee, he shared that he was living in an abandoned building, discharged to street homelessness after 4 decades of incarceration. He was sick. He was not doing well. He had recently started coming to Charm City Care Connection for respite, social support, and just warm meals. And of the many things that were happening in his life at that time, including struggling with daily fentanyl use, he looked at me and adamantly said, I want 2 things: cure my hepatitis C and just find me housing. Guys, I can prescribe medications for opioid use disorder. I can prescribe medications for hepatitis C. I can't wait until the day that I can prescribe housing. We have built a relationship over the past year, seeing him most weeks, sometimes for scheduled appointments. Sometimes he drops in to address an acute medical need. Sometimes he just comes in to say, hey. But all the time, we see him at Charm City. Charm City and the SPOT have worked together to create a health and social care model built on trust and accessibility, which I believe has been a driving factor in this patient's improvement. He started medication for opioid use disorder and hepatitis C treatment. After driving him to the emergency room to address an emergent medical issue, he allowed us to introduce and bridge him to a primary care practice where his complex medical needs could be managed. And our incredible case manager from Western has helped him apply for housing and other social support. This person needs a round of applause. Our experiences providing care in communities, witnessing the resilience of our patients, and working with people who often are poorly served by our healthcare system has transformed our perspective on healthcare delivery and where it can occur. Though medication for opioid use disorder is one of our most powerful tools at reducing overdose death, the potential impact of increased access to medication can only fully be realized if implemented within a system of integrated services tailored to provide personalized support for people who often have complex medical and social needs. We have an unprecedented opportunity, as we've seen today, to serve the people of this city. We look forward to working together to lift up the city's narrative in becoming a leader in addressing the opioid syndemic through tireless work, dedication, and urgency in serving our people who so rightfully deserve to be well. Thank you.
Thank you. We're going to move in a second over to sign the executive order, but I think it's important, Mr. President, that folks hear this a little bit more in depth. You heard the President give an emotional talk about the impact, and you've heard me talk about consistently how no one who's lived in Baltimore for more than a minute hasn't been impacted by the overdose crisis. The President's brother was my neighbor and my friend. I talked to him every single day for like 12 years as I walk my dogs every morning. No one that lives in this city isn't impacted by this. Even the council president, even the mayor, everybody who lives here. And this is why we all have to understand that this is all of our issue to deal with. With that, first, the city solicitor and I will move to sign the executive order.
Sorry.
All right, everybody. Now we will take questions.
We have a question mic over here. If you could stand up so your colleagues can capture sound. Over here.
Hi, Jessica Badger, Boxford Guide. So of the $242 million in settlement funds, how much of that is going toward attorney fees?
Yeah, I know we've talked about this before, but it's important to remember that for 6 years, our outside counsel has been fronting the cost of this litigation, so we are repaying both expenses and fees, but regardless, we brought in more than double the money we would have received under the global settlement, and we are still delivering even more in that unprecedented amount of money onto the streets of Baltimore. We have to be reminded of that consistently, that even with the attorney fees, we've returned double what we would have returned to the city of Baltimore.
But what's the dollar amount of the attorney fees?
Again, we are still in active litigation. You know that we're not going to do that. After the trial is over, we'll share all of that information with you.
What about the three settlements you've already announced?
Once the trial is over, we will share that information with you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
I know the executive order outlined broad parameters for spending, but what restrictions do we put in place to make sure the money's not misspent?
I think that this is why we have the board, and we already have practices and protocols in every city fund that we have to make sure that money isn't misspent or misused, and we'll follow the practices and standards of the city of Baltimore to make sure that that happens. So this won't just be given out. You have to go through processes. You have to be in the standings that you need to be to receive it, and this is why we're standing up the board and why we have this built, so that this once in a generation, once in a lifetime amount of money to go towards the work that's happening across the city of Baltimore that has been happening, right? This is never, I'm gonna be very clear about this. This has never been about whether the folks in city government, but the folks in the community to do this work haven't been doing this work. They just haven't had the necessary resources to keep up with what has been happening on the streets of Baltimore. And we know that this is an opportunity for us to have the resources that they desperately need.
How will that money be monitored once it's dispersed?
Again, we go through the processes that we have with any grant and any grantee in the city of Baltimore. We will follow those processes that exist, whether it's a grant coming from the federal government or the state government. We will treat this the same as we do every other a piece of money that's coming from the city and going out to groups outside of city government and within city government. Thank you.
Mayor Tara Lynch, I'm going to go on my tiptoes here. Tara Lynch.
Brian can lower the mic for you.
We're good.
Okay.
Tara Lynch, WJZ. Can you just talk about you talked about the history of this issue in the city. Can you talk about the timeline? How long did it take your team, the council, et cetera, to kind of put together this comprehensive plan for how the money would be used?
Well, we don't want to go into too much detail about that. We have active litigation going, but I'm going to be clear again. This work has been happening for a very long time in the city of Baltimore. I want to push back against anybody saying that the city, community organizations haven't been doing this work. They have. But we're talking about, as I said earlier, the streets of Baltimore being just drowned in these pills. And we have to understand, when you talk about addiction and overdose in Baltimore, it goes, but there's literally songs about it from 40, 50 years ago, right? And we have to understand, again, and note that overwhelmingly it's impacted the black community in Baltimore, and black people don't own boats and ships to bring this stuff in here. So we all know that it was pushed into these communities, and we're dealing with the fallout from that. And this is us taking a bold step into pushing back on that and finally doing what should have been done many moons ago.
And I know you mentioned the work isn't over, right? There's still active litigation. But what's your emotion today? Is this an exciting day? Is it a historic day? Classify that for me.
I wouldn't classify it as exciting at all. I would say it's a historic day, but most importantly, it's an important day. Because when you're looking at history, you will look back and see that this is the day where the city stood up this thing. And in 15 years from now, folks will be able to look and see how these organizations that have been doing this work for a long time in the city of Baltimore have now had this drastic impact because they finally had the resources to actually tackle the issue. This isn't a day for us to be in a celebratory mood. We're talking about thousands upon thousands of lives lost that shouldn't have been. We're talking about government officials like Mayor Smoke, who were ridiculed for saying the things that he said 30 years ago about what we need to do with substance abuse. And now, 30 years later, we're able to take that baton from him and take it further down towards the finish line, and hopefully be able to hand it off to the folks that will finish it over the next 15 years.
Good morning, Janine Donaldson, WBAL. We just spoke about, obviously, that Baltimore residents are not the ones bringing in the drugs with the boats and things like that, but in the different various ways that the drugs are coming in. Is any amount of the settlement money going towards stopping the drugs from actually coming into the city and attacking the problem at that root?
As much as I would love to answer that question for you, I cannot, as we are still in active litigation.
Is there going to be any push for that going forward? Any additional push beyond what the city is doing now?
Well, I think that we have to just be reminded that we work with our partners in the federal government and federal law enforcement agencies and DEA and all of those folks to deal with folks who are bringing in the illegal. But we're also talking about, as you know and heard me say, about pills that were pushed by pharmaceutical companies, and we're dealing with that through litigation. Thank you very much.